These mad ideologues, who have escaped the fate of Lin Biao, now launch a rapid-fire series of campaigns, all of which come to grief in short order. The first of these is the Bilin Picong criticism of Lin Biao and Confucius. The real target, Zhou Enlai. And everyone knows it, except for the dutiful Pekinologists, who immediately start singing the praises of Chinese jurists of 2,000 years ago. When Zhou Enlai and his friends managed to pull the plug on this campaign in April 1975, Yao Wenyuan and Zhang Junjiao launch another on the theory of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Another instant flop. Their next idea involves the most famous of all Chinese novels, Shui Hu, translated by Pearl Buck as All Men Are Brothers. The main character in this novel is the leader of a peasant insurrection who, after 120 chapters, manages to win the emperor over to his side. The real subject of all this feverish literary research is Zhou Enlai, and the idea is to embarrass him by means of allegories too complicated to recount here. Allegories aside, there is a tale here worth telling. But to tell it, we have to go back a long way.
Back to December 1936. Chiang Kai-shek has come to northwest China to inspect the troops he stationed there in readiness for a final assault on the Yan'an communist base. Surprise! Chiang is arrested by his own generals, who are sensitive to the pressure of a public opinion baffled by the passivity of Chiang's government in face of Japanese imperialism. A passivity which contrasts too sharply with the same government's vicious attacks on the communist guerrillas. Chiang is about to be executed when the U.S. cavalry comes galloping to his rescue in the shape of Zhou Enlai, the communist negotiator. 1936 being a great year for united and popular fronts, Stalin is insisting that the Chinese communists should not support the anti-Chiang mutineers. Result? Chiang Kai-shek is freed by his captor, Zhang Xu-liang. Zhou Enlai's job is to negotiate on the basis of these directives, and he barters Chiang's freedom for a promise to end the Civil War. The communists are incorporated into the national armies and recognize Chiang Kai-shek as the nation's leader.
All of which should help explain what Zhang Junjiao is getting at when he evokes the rebel hero of All Men Are Brothers, who ended up capitulating to the emperor. Not the subtlest of allegories after all.
太小看我楚刚了，我要是贪图黄金白银，也不会落到今天这种地步。
Here's another anecdote from the history of this same Xi'an incident. As negotiator between the nationalists and the communists, Zhou Enlai is constantly shuttling back and forth between Bao'an and Xi'an. One day in February 1937, the truck carrying Zhou and his bodyguards falls into an ambush. Zhou manages to escape with some of his men by taking to mountain paths. The attack has occurred only 15 kilometers from communist headquarters. Back at the ranch, Zhang Guodao, Mao's rival, suddenly finds his house surrounded by men from the Chinese KGB. But as soon as Zhou staggers back into town, these secret policemen fade away like morning mist. The party leadership apologizes profusely to Zhang Guodao for the slight misunderstanding. The official story is that Zhou has been attacked by bandits. Bandits? 15 kilometers from communist headquarters? Tell that to the Horse Marines. Some say that Zhang Guodao was so down on Zhou Enlai that he had him bushwhacked, and that the faithful law officers in the shrubbery were just waiting to cop the guilty Zhang as soon as the news came through. Give us a break. Even cops would have been smart enough in that case to warn Zhou Enlai of the danger that he was in. The fact is that there was someone that day who wanted to put Zhou Enlai away for good, and then put the frame on Zhang Guodao. And who might that have been? Think it over, comrades, but please spare us your illusions about the unbreakable bonds of comradeship forged through years of struggle among Mao, Zhou, Gangsheng, and the other old-timers of the Chinese Communist movement. 1976. Zhou Enlai is dead. Was his medical treatment sabotaged, or was he poisoned in a perfectly traditional way? As this film goes to the cutting room, we still don't know. And perhaps we never shall. But it really doesn't matter that much. The discreet charm of the bureaucracy leaves us cold. What is important is the fact that in a country where the people don't have an easy time expressing themselves, most Chinese cast a vote for the deceased Zhou Enlai and voice their sadness in a very public way. The massive demonstrations on this occasion are also a vote against the four mad ideologues of Shanghai. But Mrs. Mao, Zhang Junjiao, Yao Wenyuan, and Wang Hongwen take the offensive even before Zhou's ashes are cold. Since they control the media, the Shanghai Four are able first off to censor all footage of the funeral, which is why we cannot show you any of the ceremony itself. And then the attacks on Deng Xiaoping resume. Zhou has left the stage before Mao. Popular frustration is at a high pitch, and 3 months later, on the occasion of the Festival of the Dead, it explodes into the street. There are demonstrations and riots throughout the country. Learn to read between the lines and see how, in an official press release, Deng Xiaoping's supporters managed to smuggle through information about the April 5th events.
1976. Following is the report by worker, peasant, soldier correspondents and staff correspondents of the People's Daily. Early April, a handful of class enemies, under the guise of commemorating the late Premier Zhou Enlai during the Qingming Festival, engineered and organized, premeditated and planned counter-revolutionary political incident at Tiananmen Square in the capital. They flagrantly made reactionary speeches, posted reactionary poems and slogans, distributed reactionary leaflets, and agitated for a setting up of counter-revolutionary organizations. The counter-revolutionary activities culminated on April 5th at about 8 a.m. A loudspeaker car of the Municipal Public Security Bureau was overturned. After 9 a.m., more than 10,000 people gathered in front of the Great Hall of the People. At its maximum, the crowd at Tiananmen Square numbered about 100,000 people. The bad elements exclaimed, "Who can put the situation under control? No one in the Central Committee can. Should he come today, he would not be able to return." A bad element wearing spectacles had the impudence to announce that the Public Security Bureau must give its reply in 10 minutes. He threatened that if their demand were not met, they would smash the security department. Later, they overturned a Shanghai sedan car and set it on fire. These bad elements said that putting out the fire meant suppressing the mass movement. At 12:45, a detachment of People's Police came as reinforcement, but they too were taunted and stopped. The caps of several policemen were snatched by the rioters and thrown to the air. Some even threw knives and daggers at the People's Police. Several policemen were rounded up and assaulted. The revolutionary masses showed utmost hatred for this counter-revolutionary political incident. Yet the handful of bad elements said glibly, "It manifests the strength of the masses." They went so far as to claim brazenly that the situation has now got out of hand. It would be of no use even if a regiment or an army was called in, and so on and so forth, showing their unbridled reactionary arrogance. In the past few days, these elements not only wrote reactionary poems, but plastered reactionary posters. They lauded Deng Xiaoping and attempted to nominate him to play the role of Naji, the chieftain of the counter-revolutionary incident in Hungary. At 9:30 p.m., on receiving an order from the Peking Municipal Revolutionary Committee, tens of thousands of worker militiamen, in coordination with the People's Police and PLA guards, took resolute measures and enforced proletarian dictatorship. In high morale, the heroic Peking militiamen filed into Tiananmen Square and mounted powerful counterattacks. They encircled those bad elements who were still creating disturbances and committing crimes in the vicinity of the monument to the people's heroes. Several criminals who pulled out their daggers in a vain attempt to put up a last-ditch fight were duly punished. The revolutionary masses and the people of the whole city supported and acclaimed the revolutionary actions of the Peking worker militia, the People's Police, and PLA Guard. Resolution of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China on dismissing Deng Xiaoping from all posts both inside and outside the party.
中共中央1976年4月7日。
在毛主席党中央的直接领导下，采取果断措施，以无产阶级专政的强大威力。
And here he is, the man we've all been waiting for, the very brightest new star to emerge in 1976, Hua Guofeng. But first of all, let's take a look at the Hua Guofeng that was, the unknown of yesteryear, long before his great starring roles, first as acting prime minister and then as prime minister pure and simple. Here he is in Hunan, in Mao's native Shaoshan, inaugurating a hydroelectric project. But Hua Guofeng is not the one cutting the ribbon. That's Dao Zhu, a great screen star of southern China, since eclipsed. Hua Guofeng is the one on the right, clapping. After this walk-on part, he stood in for Xie Fujie as Chief of Public Security, and his meteoric rise had begun. Mao Zedong's death is announced to the world on September 9th, 1976. But for the Chinese people, Mao has been dead since April the 5th. What happened on that day? Well, imagine Budapest, 1956, had happened during Stalin's lifetime. October 6th, 1976. To the consternation of the foolish Lin Piaoists of the entire world, Peking announces that Mother Mao has been given the boot, along with Wang Hongwen, Yao Wenyuan, and Zhang Chunjiao. Mao's nephew, Mao Yuanxin, who has been putting the screws on Wang Dongxing to be given command of the regiment in charge of the security of the Central Committee, is knifed. Well before the great leader broke wind for the last time, Mother Mao knew that she was buggered with a barge pole. She had observed the vacillations of the hierarchy during the riots of April 5th, 1976 in favor of Deng Xiaoping and the late lamented Zhou Enlai. And she knew what this vacillation meant. It meant that she and her cronies were in the shit up to their armpits.
They're all pigs around here. All they care about is eating and drinking. They don't even want to listen to my operas.
But your ladyship, these are terrible times. People just don't have the heart for operas.
Well, see if I care. I wouldn't sing for them if they paid me.
She knew that once Mao was lowered into his grave, the best she could hope for was the convent. Zhang Chunjiao, on the point of playing his trump card, explains, what does the consolidation of power mean? It means killing. Bold words, because he omits to mention whom exactly he has lined up for the big sleep.